Well, my name is Tayyab and I have a Pakistani background. I've been in Canada for the last 20 years and have been in Calgary for the last 7 years.
My name is Maryam Tayyab. I was born in Pakistan. I moved to Canada when I was 7.
I come from a very small village in the northwest, extreme northeast in the mountains, right? And the people there used to be backward in terms of education. When I compare it to a big city like Islamabad or Karachi or Lahore, which are the 3 major cities, they were a lot more advanced. To give you one simple example, none of my aunties, my father's sisters or my mother's sister went to school. Not at all, not even for a single year. Then when it came to my generation, my 3 sisters, they went to school for a few years in primary school, just 3-4 years.
I've always had a lot more opportunities, I would say, because I was born here or because I grew up here. And my cousins back in Pakistan, although they haven't had as many opportunities, when I speak to them, it seems as though they have no issues with the way they've been brought up. They're perfectly fine, and I think it's because they haven't been exposed so much to other ideas and other perspectives.
Back home, it's a very patriarchal society, right? And women are supposed to stay inside, or were supposed to stay inside home and just cook and bear children and bring them up. That was their whole life, because they didn't have many opportunities, and even now there are not many opportunities for them outside the homes.
If my dad had raised me the way that girls are raised back in Pakistan, it would have been very difficult for me, because I grew up in this environment where everything is a lot more liberal. So being raised in a more conservative manner would have been very difficult. I have lots of friends whose parents are more conservative than my own, and I can see the struggles that they're having. And it just makes me very grateful for my dad and for how he has raised me and for giving me the opportunities. And another example is just the way my dad, he with my siblings, he doesn't treat us differently.
My thought was that ladies should be given the opportunities, their wings should not be clipped. Then it is up to them whether they want to do a job or not, but it should be their choice. If they want to go to university, to any field of their choice, they should be facilitated. And my daughter is one example, but she has got Pashtun friends who have become engineers here, graduated from UFC or even from University of Regina, etc. But back home, when I look around, I can't identify a single Pashtun lady who has gone to become an engineer or an IT professional. There are many who have become teachers or professors or doctors or nurses. So there is a kind of mindset that they think that for ladies only those 2 or 3 kinds of professions are best and they're respectable, though men would go into engineering, IT, business, etc., business administration and psychology, sociology, etc., all the humanities, etc., but very little ladies would go there. So that is one big contrast which is still continuing here.
So there have been pressures from external sources on my parents. For instance, as my dad mentioned before, my mom is more traditional than him. So I've seen instances where she feels more pressure. So for example, the way I dress, there are certain people in our community who don't dress in a Western way. They prefer more modest or more traditional dressing.
The times have have changed, and my daughter was growing up here. She was going to school here, right, to high school and then to university here. Though a lot of family members and even she wanted and my wife wanted her to go to mid school.
I know they have made comments to my mom, saying, oh, this is how your daughter should dress or this is how she shouldn't dress. And I know that has affected her a lot and also affected her opinions on how I should dress. So I think that's the biggest one. And I would say another aspect that I've seen my mom being pressured is also the whole essentially obsession with med school and becoming a doctor. When my parents were discussing my career path, I would say it was just difficult to explain to my mom that it's okay to not be a doctor. And it also felt good that I had my dad's support and that I had my own voice and I was able to stand up for what I wanted. But at the same time, it was difficult because I knew what my mom wanted, and being able, I still felt that I was disappointing her. And so that part didn't feel great, but it was also difficult to explain to her that it's okay if I'm not a doctor, like I will still succeed in life even without becoming a doctor. And having my dad's support and him being able to explain to her made it a lot easier, because I would say it's easier for them to explain to each other because because they essentially were raised in a similar manner versus me who grew up here and I think very differently than they do. So it was more difficult for me to explain to her.
My daughter, she has graduated, has double degrees, one in a bachelor in computer science and a bachelor of arts in psychology, both from University of Calgary. And two of my sons are currently going to University of Calgary, one for accounting, other for kinesiology. And the youngest one would be going to SAIT for artificial intelligence. I said, don't clip the wings of your kids, facilitate them in every way possible, and don't impose your choices on them. Let them decide their own future. Just guide them, provide guidance, but not make choices for them. That's what I would say.
I was born in a small town, northern Peru. The name is Chiclayo. And then I grew up my teenage years in Lima, Peru. My father's name is Jorge Benavides. My father works since he was a kid, and he was the oldest of his family. So he had to leave high school to work. So he always hold jobs all his life. And yes, he worked since he was about 11 years old, I believe. In my culture, I'm Latin. Men tend to be the main supporter of the home. Women don't actually go out to work, although they do, but they don't go normally out to work. So fathers are the main and the backbone and the support, financial support of the families. I guess my first passion with my father, it was the ocean. I was born in a small fisherman town, just a few meters from the ocean. So I think the first passion that we both shared was the fact of walking along the beach line, walking along the sand and along the beach with my father. The second thing was the bullfighting. The second thing was the passion for the bulls, or being closer to such a beautiful beast, being amazed by the size, volume, speed, color, flavor of the bullfighting festivity, which will be our second passion that we did share. At age 12, began my proper training. It was no longer a game, now it was learning professionally how to do things right. My parents, although they were never involved, they never say yes, they never say no. The fact that they never promoted, and other than assisting to the bullfights with me and watching them from the public side, they never promoted it. They never invest time or money into, because they didn't have it to start with. On the passion, they never say no as well too. I think it was more like an amusing thing for them. It was like, hey, look at him, he's playing to be a bullfighter, and that was just almost like a joke. It was a family joke. They didn't care because they never They never say no to the events that I went to. Even though I was injured in the beginning, they never said, no, don't do it again. School was first thing. I need to be done with the school before anything done on the bullfighting side. So school was number one, and then was bullfighting. His parenting style, I think, was relying on my mother for education because he worked all the time. He was always busy working. He was always away working. When I was younger, he was traveling. As an adult, she worked a lot in his own business and making his business grow and be strong. So he was always away. I remember visiting my father into the pharmacy that he owns because I was not going, by the time he get home, I was going to be sleeping. So I remember visiting my father and having lunch with him or dinner with him in the pharmacy, just so I could see some time, because I did it because I love him and I wanted to be with him sometimes that he couldn't. And I think I repeat that in my own life by being away from my kids because my job, because the desire of creating a stronger and bigger business, to being the producer and the provider of the home. I put many, many hours away from home, not only away from the city, but also away from Canada, creating a stronger and better future for all of us. When my first two kids were born, my parenting style was in many ways a copycat of my dad. I left the day-to-day operations of the house to my wife. She was a very dedicated mother to them, and she didn't have to go out and work. She was supposed to stay home mom. And I was very proud of that fact here. And I was an entrepreneur, and I ran a very full-time business, and I was the heart of my business. I have many employees, and I needed to make sure that the business ran, and I was very successful at it. And I was a very good provider, I do believe. So I was not involved with them as much as I should have. And that is something that nowadays come back and haunt me from time to time. But my parenting style was almost a copycat of my dad did. For my first two kids.
I used to always think all of his decision making was always based on money. And I think it was a little bit less than money and more on providing, right? And about being able to, taking on the burden of providing for the household. And, while he was affectionate growing up and tried to be available, he was absent a whole lot because he was always working and, working on whatever entrepreneurial pursuits he had. But he was always very business focused and very entrepreneurial. And as I got older and I, tried to find my own way in the world and find my own career, I got into social work, and which was very, very contrary to the sort of career that my father had hoped for me.
I wish I would have worked less and I spent more time with them growing up, with my son and my daughter growing up. I wish you could do more things. I have not as many memories as them as kids doing things together. And although I think I did my best to do so, I wish I have more of those, because I would have a more treasure of memories that I have now. And I wish I would be more, although I believe I did more things with my kids than my father did with me ever. But I wish I would have done more.
And I also didn't have the relationship that I wanted with my dad until my mid-20s. We didn't really establish that closeness and really mutual respect for each other until I was an adult, making the decisions and being the master of my own life, right? And so I do. I think there's a lot of aspects about my father that I really rejected early on, and that I knew I was not going to carry that forward for myself because I felt that absence. And even with my parents divorcing when I was quite young, I think I was about 9 or 10 years old when they split up. He did a lot of backtracking, at that rate. Like, he really tried to be more present and be more involved, but still widely distracted, right? Still needing to now work twice as hard to be able to run his household and actually run his household without the support of my mom or anything too. So
I tend to pursue my kids on the phone often enough now, trying to communicate more and better. I ask for more time. I ask for more time on the phone with my daughter who lives in Ottawa. And when my son is here, I phone often, I text often to see if he has time to have supper or dinner or whatever, trying to improve my communication and the time with him. Because my father has Alzheimer's at the end of his life. I'm being robbed for the moments, for the memories, for the moments that we spent together. When my dad passed away, I went to pick up some of the stuff that he has in Peru. And I found a little box with newspaper cuttings and with little comments of my presentation here or there during different years. And I never knew that he actually ever cut anything and put it away. So that was very emotional for me. I mean, I always thought that he will not care, but he did. Advice for new parents. It is complicated, but somehow a higher power makes things happen in an easier way. And spend as much time with your kids as possible and try to make time and especially create memories. Because when you get older, the only thing you really have are memories. And it's wonderful to revisit them. In the past 10 days that I've been struggling trying to get pictures from me and my father for the project. The very few that I collected, they are now such a treasure that I'm going to find a special way to keep them alive, So I didn't realize they were so much treasure until I saw them again. And some of them for the first time. So I guess the best advice would be is create memories, lasting memories.
I'm Craig Montgomery, and I'm a 60 scoop survivor. I was born in Edmonton, and at about the age of 3, I was adopted with my older brother Ken, my older sister Holly, and my younger brother Sean into a family, and we were raised in Canmore, Alberta. It wasn't until later in life that we had found our mother, and also we had 5 more siblings, Crystal, Candace, Carrie, Richard, and Stephen, who now I've built relationship with. So my father, my adoptive father, Chris was his name. He was an Englishman, and from a young age, he was a very soft-spoken individual, but stern when he needed to be. I think it's maybe because he was raised in a boarding school when he was young, so he was disciplined at a young age too. So that kind of reflected on the way that he raised his children, I think, right? So when I was younger, my father's treatment towards me was, it was tender. It was loving. Yeah, he seemed like a good role model to look up to at that young age. When we were adopted, he cooked at a restaurant, and then they had an opportunity to purchase, I guess, a restaurant. So they did. Working at his restaurant when I was about 7, those were good memories. I value the concept of getting me to work at a young age, and so those are good memories, working in the restaurant and working my way up to the dishwasher and prep cook and busboy. I think he was a true mountain man. He liked to go off into the wilderness and take us hiking and things like that, right? So He made it a point one time to take me out of all my siblings on a trip to BC when I was younger, and I fondly remember that. And we went picking fruit and staying with some of his friends. So my dad was he was pretty quiet. He just went with the flow. And so when things started to break down between my father and my older brother Ken, my dad just kind of rolled along with it, right? I think my mother actually she kind of made us out to be problematic, perceived it to him that we were problematic. And so when there was a resolution, he would just kind of roll with it because that was his wife and that's kind of what they agreed to, I guess, right? So, but yeah, I think my mother actually had a big part in a lot of the changes that my father had with each and every one of us, to be honest, right? Yeah. I think it was because my parents had made these decisions, let's say for my older brother to move out, it was that's the decision they made. That's probably the best decision, right? Not thinking that it might be coming my way, right? I always tried to be the people pleaser, right? I always thought I was in the safe or in the good, right? Because I was doing what I was told and things like that, right? And so for some reason, I thought they were actually problematic. To add on to that, I was the last of my siblings to move out. I held on for a while, I guess, right? And it turned out, yeah, it happened to me too that way. But for good reason. I mean, I look back now and think about it, right? It's like, can't be fed with a silver spoon and platter all your life, right? We had to learn how life worked, right? And if that had to be the hard way, I guess, I mean, now I recognize that, right? So I'm grateful for some of it. When the relationship between me and my father started to fade away a little bit, I felt really lost. I felt really abandoned. I felt really, really curious of why, I think, right? There was a lot of mixed emotions, I think, through that. Yeah, and even, constantly tried to pursue a relationship with him. I think I might have mentioned that before, but it wasn't reciprocal. And so, it's still a question that lingers that maybe I'll never get the answer for, really. After the years of being adopted in my teen years, the idea of being pushed away was pretty evident, and I felt hopeless, sad, a whole bunch of emotions, I think, that way. So my adoptive parents made it aware to us that we were Native at a young age, but in our upbringing, we were never encouraged. We were never really introduced much to the culture. Yeah, it's like there was times in my life where I wish I wasn't Native, right? I feel sad that my culture wasn't encouraged, but where I'm at now, I feel happy that I'm coming full circle and learning a lot about my culture and embracing it. In my teenage years, 18, 19, I had a suspicion that there was something else behind it. I couldn't say what, but to me, the way the things had played out, it seemed like they had adopted kids for monetary gain, perhaps, right? And when you're 18, then you're now an adult, so we're done with you kind of thing, right? So the relationship between my mother deteriorated quicker, only because she was the one that was around a lot of time when we were younger, and so she would do a lot of the disciplining, and her style of disciplining would be questionable to some people, I would think, right? So when my mother did end up passing away, it gave my dad, at the time, a good reason to close more communication with us, or me. So after my mother passed, in the 20 years between her passing and his passing, the relationship between me and him was, it wasn't well accepted, and it was very minimal. When he did die, I wasn't that distraught. To me, he was already dead to me because of the relationship, I think, right? So when he did pass, I mean, there was sadness. Definitely sadness, more for him, I think, at this point. I believe chastity changed my life for the better at that time. In 2013, we welcomed our son. Since and because I met chastity, I've begun to learn and explore more about the Native culture. She is Blackfoot from Siksika, and learning the native ways through her and her people is relative to me. And we try to instill that in our son. With Christian, introducing dancing, drumming, prayer, smudging, and just living on the land and being one with the land and recognizing the Creator. I know the native culture was definitely the missing part in my life. And I just feel that things have come full circle from being born native and to not being encouraged it through my life, but to have it introduced and to pursue it now.
Helping Craig get back into his native culture is a blessing because I've had generational trauma where I didn't learn any of my culture. So it was kind of like, as I grew older, I taught myself and I got the knowledge from my elders, my grandma especially. My grandmother had alcoholism, but that never really showed for me growing up because she was always at the front door putting our needs first. People tell me stories of they never left any people behind going to powwow trails. That was the kind of respect I grew up with. So it was I wanted to show that with my son, and Craig had the same integrity. And so that brought us together, and I'm showing him a lot with what I've learned down the road with my grandma and her teachings. It is very important for us because growing up, when you go to those powwows and you feel the drum beating and it just has that nostalgia of I want that for my son at that time. And I was very young. I was 23 or 24 when I met him. Having our son together settled me down. It's been 9 years now.
So I find that my parenting style is fun and loving, tender. I find that my parenting skills are more engaged. And maybe that's because I only have one child, but I love being a father to my son. And I gotta definitely try to curb the way that I handle certain situations with anger and things like that. But all in all, I just try to be a really good friend with my son. There was a lot of fun things that I did with my adoptive father growing up that now that I have my own son, I introduced to him. Prep cooking and going for hikes and walks and bike rides and things like that. So I'm happy that I attained that knowledge from my adoptive father, right? So for new fathers, I would say embrace the moment as hard as it gets, embrace it. It's not gonna be easy, but if you can give it all your love, that's what it takes. Yeah, just love it.